I'm going to do something a little different on this video. I'm going to show you the broken vehicle on the trail that we ran, and then we're going to fix this 14-bolt ARB axle and an upgrade in the ARB, which will be dealing with the engagement ring. And then we'll go back and finish the trail. So a little bit different than what I normally do, but it should be fun. So here we go. Not like... I don't know. 14-bolt axle history. Well, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Today, I am working on this 14-bolt rear differential. It's got an ARB. If you notice, there is missing a copper hose. It is also missing the axle shafts right at the moment because part of this right side axle shaft is broken off inside the carrier. Before you disassemble something like this, we need to get a couple measurements. This is the correct way to do it. We're going to get a backlash measurement. And then we will try to get a preload. If I can't get a preload, then what I will do is mark my spanners, and I will try to put them in the exact same spot to not only mirror the backlash, but mirror the preload. I'm more concerned with making sure the backlash matches more so than the preload. Reason being is there's a wear pattern established on the teeth. So first thing, get a dial indicator attached. Dial indicator attached. I'm closer to 12 thousandths than anything, which is actually a little out of spec, but that may be okay because it may just be due to wear. Now, before I forget, I write it down just so I don't have a forgetful memory at some point and go, is that 10 or 12? So now I know what that is. I'm also going to make a note. Someone has already marked the bearing caps, so I don't have to do that at this point. Like I said, I'm just going with where the carrier just starts to move. I'm only getting about 5 inch-pounds of preload. I'm not going to say that is an accurate reading at this point. I will verify where my spanner nuts are marked, and I'm going to bring those as close to that as I can. 5-6 inch-pounds of preload on a used bearing is probably fairly close to what it should be. If we'll have to see once I get this apart. That one was too loose. Well, based on breaking these loose by hand, these two were pretty loose, these two were pretty tight. I'm betting this was put together with an impact, so that is one thing I will change when I put it back together, is use torque wrenches. Now I wiped this spanner nut and just using a Sharpie drew the line. So when I thread these back out, once I get my lash, I will move one in and one out and get it as close to that as I can. Just another thing to point out, this one is stamped with the gears. It's 513s. Pretty good gear. And now that I'm marked, I can start using a punch and just turning the spanners out. If you've noticed, these have been marked before. Pull the carrier out, it's getting hung up on the carrier. Never know when it's going to make more fun. Okay, I used a broomstick and pushed that little floater back in, so now this will come out. But on these 513 gears with thick gears, you kind of have to pull them out at an angle like I'm doing here so that it'll clear that nose bearing. Once I'm out, inspect all your teeth. Make sure you don't have a surprise before you go back in. This one looks like pretty clean. I don't think we got anything into the ring and pinion. I think it was all captured inside of the carrier. Anytime you have a catastrophic type failure, axle, shaft, ring, pinion, cleaning is really important. Now, I took some time and removed this spanner nut, and it's probably good. Look at all the stuff that was wedged in between that spanner, the axle tube. Eventually that would have gotten into either bearings or floated into the locker. So always make sure you get stuff cleaned out. This is the tough part. That axle shaft is broken in there. I need to pull that out so I can inspect the splines. I tried a big magnet, at least one that'll fit down onto the other side, and it does not want to come out with the magnet. So next step, try to get a punch on one side and push it on through. Feels like I am getting somewhere here. Before I smack my hand, it's already injured, so. "14-bolt axle shaft is tough." Pretty shiny brake. One nice thing about having old broken 14-bolt stuff around, I can test, make sure the splines go in and out. So far, so good. My next step on this one, I need to pull this bearing and collar assembly off. Fortunately, I can't use my clamshell puller on this particular setup. It's too wide. That air collar is behind the bearing, kind of becomes integral as a piece that is pressed in. So I'm going to have to split this bearing and then use a puller to pull it the rest of the way off. It's kind of funny. Most of these differentials I do anymore, that clamshell puller works so good that I forgot I used to have to do almost all of them this way. That air collar off, I just want to kind of bring in here and look at this. There are pieces of broken parts here in the air holes. That's never good. I don't know if it'll do me any good to take this apart or not to see what it looks like inside, but because I've already found parts, metal parts in the dowel pin air holes, that means we got to continue going apart. There's little channels in 4 different positions. You can really get a good punch. Once the ring gear is removed, you flip the carrier upside down, and there are some Allen head bolts to remove to separate the 2 halves. But those I'm not doing yet. I want to split this, and those are done with the outer Allen bolts. And we might get lucky on this one. Before I get too excited taking the rest of the stuff apart, I'm removing the springs, which is part of the air locker system. I don't want to lose any of those. So this is the engagement collar for the locker. I think it'll work. I'm just going to clean this up. The only way I'm going to know for sure is assemble what we know is broken. Voila. And do an air pressure check and see if it engages and holds pressure. I built myself a little air tester for ARBs so I can test these on the bench. The rest of this looks like we're in good shape. If the air system over here all works correctly. Let me see if I can kind of explain this a little bit better. This collar is what engages and disengages this side gear and locks it up. Now, if this side gear can't move, your spider gears can't move, nor can the other side gear. So if you can lock that up by applying air to this and forcing these gears together with this gear in here, which is fixed, nothing inside can turn. But when you release the air, the springs lift this up enough to where that spider gear can float now and move inside. It just clearances. It's like a big version of a lockout hub. I don't think we have any issues with it being able to work. All I think I need to do is clean it up. We'll have to order some parts and then bench test it to see for sure. This is another example. Without that air collar engaged, this just spins freely against the thrust washer. And then when the collar pushes everything out, she locks in. Now that I've cleaned up and ready to go back together, I wanted to show something. I could have probably just cleaned this out and put my new air ring on and it would work. But since I had to take it apart and there's an upgrade available, the engagement ring that has all the little springs in it, you can upgrade it to this style of a wafer spring. I think it's a little more reliable and a little less likely for damage and breakage. These are real easy to assemble. You can use either grease, or if you just center this, and then we can flip this other half of the carrier over and make sure you line up your holes so that it'll stay together. These small bolt holes that we remove to split it are basically just there to hold it together while you're assembling. And you can tell your spring is engaging now that it's I tighten these down evenly so that the carrier doesn't stick and you end up with it wedged. You'll find out when you go to put the ring gear back on. Now, 14 bolt, this does have lock washers, so I'm really not concerned about Loctite, but just to be on the safe side, I am going to clean the bolts up and Loctite those tight anyway, heavily at some point. I was able to line up one of the bolts from the top. Now I've just flipped the carrier over, just makes it a little easier. Get a couple of these started, enough to draw the ring gear on. There we go. Just going to work the ring gear up with a light impact so I don't stretch any bolts. This is always the least fun part on the bigger differentials, is torquing these bolts. I'm on my second rotation, so they don't take much more. Okay. All right, we're done with this part of it. The next part of this assembly is installing the air collar. Now these air collars have O-rings, and since this is an ARB, those O-rings are square. Make sure you grease them, make sure you don't roll them, and be very careful installing them. This is where you can tear those rings and then the air won't work. I am going to, once this is installed, then I'm going to press the bearing back on. Once the bearing is pressed back on, I am going to do a bench test. All right, that one's in nice and square. And so is that one. Now, if you put this on upside down, the bearing won't seat correctly. There we go. I've tried using some of the little seating tools for automatic transmissions. They just don't fit in that tight. But if you're just careful when you push it down and then rotate it, make sure. Now I could probably test it right now to see if it would hold, but I don't want to take the chance of pushing that bearing off or the collar off. The bearing will be pressed fit. Okay, off to the press. I do enough 14 bolts and Dana 60s. I've got a pretty good selection of stuff. This particular one, I've got a tube that is the right diameter for the race. And you definitely want to watch and make sure you don't have any issues with something interfering. Once the bearing is fully seated, we want to make sure that our air ring will still rotate freely. Okay, it's now seated, and I always give it a little extra make sure that to test the ARB, I can hook up this little deal I made that has hoses and fittings. I don't have an end for this, so I would just have to use a rubber grommet. But for the average person, you can just use a rubber tipped air nozzle and listen. And if you listen, you'll hear the actuator engage and disengage when you apply and remove the air source. And it's doing just that. So at this point, I think we're okay. I did not see anything else broken in this unit. Now, lug this thing over and get her in the cut that off. All right. Now I can just roll this in, and remember I will have to kind of squirrel it around that pinion. Make sure you move the airline out of your way. A little bit of wiggling and stuff, and get past that support nose bearing. Remember, your caps are marked. I'm just putting this cap on enough to hold the carrier in, keep it from falling out while I get this other side going. Now I've got this tube I have to feed through. You need to feed it so that it does not interfere with the gears. It has a notch and a groove here that keeps the air collar from turning or spinning, and it's been damaged a little bit, so I'm going to take this over to the workbench and clean it up and flatten it so that I don't have to worry about that becoming a problem. You can see how this has been ground down, even flat. I have a concern. So I think I'm going to spot weld a couple of pieces of welding wire in there, and then I'm going to grind this down and flatten it out, and we'll see if it has a little better, more firm hold on it. going to snug this down. I'm going to verify that that keyway has locked into the air collar. Okay, I had to file just a skosh off on the ears so that it fit between the slot. So I think we should be in good shape now. Now the harder part I'm going to have to do here is fish the tube through the hole. It is through. Now usually you'll have to trim these tubes. What I've found seems to work pretty good is I'll loop my tube down around here, and it seems to work a little better on 14 bolts. Another little trick where it goes over there we go. Okay, I like that. Now I'm going to trim this and bolt the airline before I finish torquing this. First things first, I need to actually adjust my backlash. Okay, I'm going to snug these up just enough. I'm going to just get this close, and then I'll go get the dial indicator. We're snug there. I have to back this off a little. All right, time for some measuring stuff. Okay, I'm back with dial indicator. Nice perpendicular on the corner. I'm just under 10. Snugging up a little bit of preload when I do this. Okay, I'm at 11. Too much. Doesn't take much on these. Your torque. This is the part that bothers me. I want to line these up, my spanner stops. I don't know if I can do it and maintain loose side or the tight side. Okay, I can go that way here. Line that one up. Yay, I think I got it. Almost identical to what it was. Okay, I'm going to give myself a little preload here. Both my locks will slide in. Just over 12 thousandths. Let's see what these look like when I torque the bolts, and then I'll double check the inner. Lose a little bit of okay. Spanner locks will line up. So I think I'm going to call this good in here. Now I'm going to finish the air. Now what I usually do is I'll push this up a little bit, cut this off, tighten it up, and then make sure nothing hits. I may have to move some of this to where it really sucks down in tight. And let's tighten this down. That O-ring will squeeze the tube, and then the other half of the hose has a little self-compressing fitting on it. This is another one of those little areas. Snug's good. You don't have to tighten things into oblivion. So now I want to make sure I think Everything will clear right there. You want to make sure that this hose isn't rubbing on anything in here, and the cover will clear it. Right now we're good there. So I think I am a go on this one. Now I can just install the upper half. There we go. Now if you're gonna adjust or flatten anything, make sure you hold the other end. I don't have anything touching anywhere right now. Just want that a little further away. There we go. Once I tighten this piece here down, I may have to move the airline a little further. Again, you don't want it to touch or vibrate. And I'll verify the cover goes on without hitting anything as well. Like that. I made sure that the lines clear all the spots in the cover, so I'm good to go there. Just throw the cover on, fill it with fluid, and we're on the road again. Or I guess in this case, off-road again. All right, we're back in business with this one, so hopefully he'll be back on the trail with us here real shortly. ARB is verified working, test drove her, made sure it did work. Other than that, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stuff. Got the broken stuff off the trail, and now we're going to continue. Alternate line. It's not easy either, but this is one of those obstacles. It's really hard to mentally convince yourself to hit the gas and roll through where that right tire is going to hit, so it doesn't do that and turn you sideways. Right there is where you bump. Yay! All right, attempt 2 here. Let's see how this goes. Just back up a little bit and go. There. Yeehaw! The right place at the right time. I usually take 2 or 3 shots getting in there. Now turn hard right. You're in the notch, it's perfect. Was it? Yeah. I don't think he's really going to try it, but you never know. Okay. I know. I bump.
That's a brake bump, like brake stuff bump. Huh?
Well, don't hit that hard, no. But I think if you roll into it a little bit. How's it look on that side? This side looks better.
Well, the hole just got a little bit bigger.
We can put some rocks in it like everyone else does.